The Strawberry Woman. I'm 39, married since 2010, one teenage son. Wife and I dated since 2002 before getting married. I found out my wife had been having a physical relationship with what I thought was my best friend. I knew of the emotional part before getting married to only find out about the physical part shortly after the marriage. It all happened before the marriage. I found out about the emotional part of it days before the marriage, continued on with it, and then found out about the physical part days later. We had been dating 8 years prior to this. There are a lot more stories tied into this relationship. I didn't add them because I didn't feel the intro was the appropriate place. As for the other comment, nothing really has been done. We did the counseling sessions, but that was a waste. At times we are good. I didn't trust her at the beginning, which I believe is understandable. Then as time went on, I thought I was building that trust back to where now I believe it's just, I simply don't care. The sessions felt like it was either it's time to forgive and forget or move on. Those are the two choices you have. We talked to the counselor together, then one-on-one. I felt like after her session with him it was all on me. It basically boiled down to she wasn't in love with me anymore because I didn't show her attention, and she wanted to hurt me as bad as she could, so she picked the best friend. It was a double whammy. I was the best man in this guy's wedding only a year prior to this, and him and his wife were expecting their first child 2 months after all this hit the fan. And to top it off, I had just paid for all of us to go on vacation together. Supposedly this is when he put the first move on her. He was actually so drunk he got sick, and I was washing his truck for him so his wife wouldn't go nuts. He's in the truck telling my other half how he wants to be with her. The next day we all are getting ready to go out, and my BF and GF are nowhere to be found. An hour later they show up saying they wanted to go check out the pool. At this time, we already have our sin. He's 7 years old when all of this is happening. When we get home, she discovers a family member has passed away. I send her in a plane to be with them. When she was gone, we text each other maybe 30 times the 3 days she was gone. They text in the 1800 to 2000 text message range. I find all this out a few months later, when I actually realize something is going on. The reason I heard was she didn't realize how much I cared for her. Of course, this was after I found out. And for me, I have no reason. Maybe it's because I wasn't always the best. About 2 years before all of this, I had moved out of my house, our home I guess you call it, due to her financial issues, which still plague us today, and had a relationship with another woman. I realized this wasn't what I wanted and moved back home after a few months. I guess I felt like it was our now we are even. I've seen them play out both ways. The past 8 years I could almost guarantee nothing has happened. I think everyone's situation is different, even if they have similar problems. I just don't know how to answer that. I don't know if 8 years later I can give up after I made it out like I forgave. I joined here because I felt guilty only reading other people's posts without at least going through mine. I don't know, I thought it would all be okay by now. We as recently as weekend before last had a 2-hour conversation about everything that happened. It basically starts off with her saying how happy she is and how good of a man I am. I answer back with I'm the same person I was in 2010. Then it's just a long drawn-out conversation on how you did this. Why did you do this? Will I ever know the truth about what all has really happened since we've been together? She usually hangs in there just being apologetic. Then she gets defensive and tells me how she didn't think I loved her and he told her everything she wanted to hear. Then the conversation just ends. I realize it's not going anywhere. The last time was in October 2010. This is when I found out something was going on. I'm not sure if any contact was made right after or not. Yes, this guy is no longer in our lives at all. I used to work with him. I was his only friend for a while. I helped him move up at our company and all that. I don't know if she would or not. I didn't think she would have ever in a million years messed with this guy. I didn't think he would do this either, so I don't know. Since the company we worked for folded up, I haven't seen him or his wife since. They only live maybe 25 minutes from us. We went through counseling right after it happened. Felt like it was a waste. And I agree, right now I'd have to say I'll probably never get over it. I can admit that I'm hoping one day I will, but it's not looking good. If you take away the cheating, we have a good relationship. Her ability to manage money scares me. This was a problem I referenced earlier. I feel like I have to keep a close eye on her, and when I mention something, she gets mad and says I'm treating her like a child. When we got married, after finding out all this, I got hit with a $12,000 school loan she hadn't paid that she told me was handled. She has recently run up a few credit cards again, maybe $4,000. Other than that, I guess the cheating would be the only complaint. So, if there was a magic procedure that could erase the affair, it would be nothing more than to the constant battle of managing how she spends money. Believe me, no one can beat up worse than I have done myself over the last 8 years. I will look into this book tonight. I'm working nights this entire weekend. Yes, we are close in age. As mentioned earlier, I'm 39 and she's 36. As far-fetched as it may seem, after I wrote the last post, another notice came in the mail about an overdue credit card. These things add extra stress. Our son is getting ready to drive, so I'm looking for him a vehicle, adding him to the insurance. We just bought a new house 3 years ago, more land, and bought a new boat in October. All of this, and she only pays the trash bill and her new car payment, which I've made once to try to help her out. I just had to stroke a check for $750 to pay her taxes on her car that she didn't pay last year. I don't think a day has went by in the last 8 years and haven't at least thought about it once. Some days are worse, some days it doesn't bother me at all. I think recently I had a dream about it. Ate me up so bad I actually rode to where she uses to work and they would meet. I know, that's sad, but it's what I did. I told her about it. Actually, that was part of our conversation the other night. She always wanted to get married, from the very beginning. I was the one who pushed it off. This is a terrible answer, I know, but I didn't see the importance of being married. I always said, what does it matter? I now know it matters a lot, especially to her. Looking back, I wish it was all different. Should have married around the time our son was born. She was actually just coming out of her first marriage then. I am in charge of the main finances. I do pretty good with my company. I'm making over $130K a year and she will probably make $15K. I provide 2 credit cards to her in which I pay. I supply one to our son in which I pay. I don't know why she went out and got 2 extras behind my back and ran them up. She claims it was to help her build her credit. Now it's back in shambles. There are days I regret marrying after finding out what happened. Then sometimes I wonder if it would have happened if I'd married her before then. When I moved out over the financial situation, she had her time and freedom as well. We weren't married, she went out with other guys. I wouldn't say I expect higher for someone other than myself, but I expect something similar to what I'm offering. I don't think anyone should settle for less than what they bring to the table. I do appreciate your comments. I knew going into this it wasn't a sympathy party and I didn't want it to be. I just wanted to share and hopefully work through it. There is plenty more that wasn't touched on. Actually, when I met her, the first husband was locked up. He got out and they had slept together. She told me they were in the middle of a divorce. I found out about this about 2 years after it happened. Her best friend told me. I also found out a few other things that shouldn't have happened. I'm not saying and never did say either of us was a saint. And just to be clear, I do handle my finances very well. My family is very well taken care of. The first deal was she went on an online school and decided to quit. We were not married at the time and she told me she was paying on it. When I saw the bill over $12,000, I got upset. Why did you lie? After we got married, I paid that bill for her in full. We live in a very nice home, have nice vehicles, timeshares, take vacations, boat, do as we please, and she pays on $30 bill a month. I think I'm more than man up on the financial part on my end. I don't know for a fact that she hasn't, like I said in an earlier post. Maybe it's because I'm not checking up on her to see if anything is going on. There was a time when I would look at phone records, etc. I haven't since 2010. I remember the day I found out. The friend was at our house. She was going to town. She leaned over and kissed him on the cheek, like she had done forever, and came over and told me bye. I remember seeing the way he looked at her. Then he acted really weird, asking me how long it took for him to get home from our house and stuff like that. He left shortly after she did, only to meet up with him. I looked at phone records and was absolutely floored. They were texting 2,000 to 4,000 times a month. All that day they texted. He texted her as he sits at my house with me and my son. I guess I really couldn't tell you if she has done it again or not. I just haven't seen anything like that again. Maybe I'm not looking. I guess initially I thought it was all on me. I deserved it. I should have married her and paid her more attention. As mentioned, we both had our flings with other people prior to this happening. Now granted, these were overlooked and I thought we moved on since we both had messed up and we weren't married and all that good stuff. Things had pretty much settled down, or at least I'd thought. I was meeting her every day for lunch at work. To me, it was the first time we had both shown signs of maturing into a family. I reckon this is what started to bother me the most after the initial shock and thinking it was all on me. I know people will say y'all both had issues, blah, blah, that's fine. I've never said we were saints or I hadn't ever done anything wrong. It was more of the timing of this one and who it was with. Half a year later. Does anyone else have problems mainly around the time you found out about the affair? I found out 9 years ago to the date about my wife having a PA with what I thought was my best friend. I was the best man in his wedding and all that. They texted each other 1,000 of times a month, had the affair, etc. I still remember all the dates that she laid out for me, even though I know it was more hookups than she indicated. I can't stop looking through old Facebook posts, imagining what she was thinking when she wrote them. One that gets me is we had a B-day party for my brother. Her and the BF went riding around in the golf cart. She swears nothing happened, but her Facebook post says last night was so much fun. A bonfire never felt so good before. I just have to imagine something happened that night. I know, let it go and stop wondering. It's been 9 years. I guess initially it was I didn't want to lose to another man, maybe. Stupid, I know. Then it was our son, which I'm so thankful I've been able to watch him grow up. He's 16 now. And I would say I do care for her. I'm good with everything except August to October 2010. I often wonder if it's because I know deep down there is more to it. As hard as it was to hear the details I did manage to get from her, I know there are more than likely more, and for whatever reason 9 years later that still bothers me. Would it make a difference? I don't know for sure. Will she ever tell me now? No. When I did get the info from her, it was, they met 5 times, had slept together 2 times on one of the meetings that ended in oral. The oral part bothers me. She said the second time he pulled her to the bedroom and the bonding was going on, she started to feel bad for what she was doing. She stopped him but felt bad for him and decided to finish him off that way. I was like, gee, thanks for caring. Anyway, I asked her about the oral part and she then said it happened twice. Then when I said I thought it was once, she said yeah, it was just once. So, you already know it's not all out there. My mind is always racing, not just this but this time of the year it consumes me. As bad as I want to ask her to explain the bonfire comment, I know I will get nothing happen. Maybe I'm just a nut. I completely understand the harsh reality. I let myself get into this situation, and if I were to say the hell with it, we need a divorce, I'd feel selfish and really screwed up that I kept her in the relationship this long. I should have manned up 9 years ago. Our relationship is pretty good. I often wonder if she's doing anything she shouldn't be, but don't really have any reason to believe she is. She stays on the phone a lot, but she is open and always willing to let me see what she's doing on there. She's awful with money management but would give me her last dollar if I needed it. Most of our friends are jealous of our relationship. We have great jobs, don't want for anything, have fun when we are together, etc. Physical life could be a tad better, stress from work, our son being older and in the house, etc. We are only off together 1 day a week on average. After finding out she was remorseful, I'd say. Initially she had planned on moving out, said she had told him she was leaving me regardless. She said she didn't realize I loved her as much as I did. I often wonder if it's because he dropped her like a bag of rocks. His wife was pregnant, actually had their first child the weekend after I brought this to light. He had asked her to move away with him. She said he told her he didn't care about the unborn child, but when I confronted them, he was done with her. We actually worked together too, so that added extra stress. Knowing the truth about all of it would maybe keep my mind from racing and wondering. But who knows? I really don't know. Right before she confessed to the physical part, she said, "Are you sure you want to know the truth?" Of course, I said yes, but I'm convinced it was downplayed. I know I was working one day and she got our son off with the grandparents for him to come over. He had to work that night. I was getting off early that day and she constantly kept asking what time Kay was leaving. Never cared before. I obviously didn't have any clue. I just can't imagine as a man driving 35 minutes to my house, and physical part wasn't the intention. Of course, she said they talked, made out, and only laid in the bed for 30 minutes or so before he left. I know they cheated. We are not for friends anymore and never talked beside work-related stuff at work. Thankfully our business closed and we went separate ways. I never see him or his wife out and about. I may sit her down and talk. Last time we talked about it was this time last year. She said she would leave if I wanted her to, and she didn't want me to be miserable with her. I told her it was just bad timing and I'd get over it like I always do. I called his wife right after I talked to her. The night I found out he was actually at our house. The wife has always been a hug and kiss on the check to our friends. That night I noticed him looking at her behind a lot. She was heading to the gym. She leaned over to kiss him, and the way she put her hand on his face, I immediately knew something was off. He was texting someone all day while at the house. Later found out it was her. Time she left, he asked me how long I thought it would take him to get home. He left immediately, and of course it was to see her at the gym. I went to look at phone records and saw they had been texting all day every day for 3 months. I called her and said we need to talk. Of course, she had deleted their conversation. I immediately called his wife. She went crazy on him. It was definitely hard because of the relationship I thought we had as friends. A few months prior he took her to an amusement park for her birthday. I told her I didn't like the idea. The next day she is ready and running out the house with him. Of course, she didn't call or text me the entire day, and he didn't call or text his wife. I blew that off after venting on them both. Didn't realize that could have been the beginning of their relationship. My childhood was okay. Dad was always and still is a prick. Abusive to our mom early on, and they have separated several times but remain together today. So, the polygraph question is good. At the very beginning of our relationship, she was married to a drunk. He was in jail when we met and they were in the process of divorce. About 2 years into our relationship, one of her friends called and told her she needed to confess immediately. I overheard her conversation and she denied everything. She actually had slept with her ex-husband one day and never told me. This was prior to us moving in together. She denied sleeping with him for years, and I only got it from her when I told her some of our friends at a polygraph machine and they were coming over. I told her I was going to ask her about sleeping with her ex. She broke down and admitted she did. Serial cheater, I guess you would say she is. 2 times I know of in 18 years. The first one she says it was her husband and she didn't think we would be serious. She without a doubt thinks I'm divorcing her when our son turns 18. We actually kid around about it. We will have a minor disagreement and I'll say I can't wait till he's 18. It usually actually calms the mood down. And to be fair, we don't fight or argue hardly ever. We haven't talked about the affair for a year, this time last year. So, in all fairness, I'm on here talking to you fine folks rather than her. I know what I'll get from her, kind of knew what I'd get here, but I wanted to write it out somewhere to help get through these last couple of days. It's been a mess. It has been easier and easier as each year goes along. This morning my Facebook post from when I found out popped up on my memories. That didn't help. I need to delete that mess. I had thought about asking her to delete post from 9 years ago, but thought it was nice to have a reminder of how little she thought of me then in case I decide to go through with a divorce. Maybe I never do get a divorce. Is a divorce the only answer? No, I'm not happy with what happened, but I said I'd get over it with time. Didn't think 9 years later it would still be on my mind. And it isn't 90% of the time, like I originally wrote it's this time of the year. A month from now I might think briefly about it and move on. I think 18 years of relationship is a long time to throw away. I know, it meant nothing while she was doing what she did. If she is telling the truth and came completely clean with everything and I did make the decision to stay, which I have, how is it completely hell or a waste? I originally asked if people had a hard time when the anniversary came around. I mentioned not completely knowing the truth, etc. I could divorce her now, find a new love, and would you ever really know the truth about what happens with the new relationship? No, maybe you just don't ever find out. I'm not trying to justify it either way, but I'm not sure all the comments, replies match what I was originally asking. The claims of the physical part and ex-job were supposedly a one-time deal at his house. They had slept together. It wasn't what she imagined or hoped for, as she put it. They went back out of the room, and 20 minutes later or so he was pulling her back and telling her he wanted to redeem himself. She says this was better, but then she felt bad for what she was doing, so time him to stop. This is when the oral occurred. I'm amazed how well I can remember this. I can remember her finally admitting to it. I can remember her stumbling somewhat when I tried to get her to mess up the confession. Like I said, or twice, and she agreed. Then I said, you originally said once, and she was like, yeah, that's what I meant to say. I had a hard time remembering so much other stuff, but this is what runs through my mind. The Facebook post, there are several. You go through 2010, you see where it was about me, us, our family. And then you see the term. It was actually in August. I took him and his pregnant wife on vacation with us. The three of us went to a bar and his wife stayed with our son. This is where he supposedly told her he was in love with her. The weekend we got home she found out her grandma had passed. Another state, so I flew her out to be with the family. The course of 4 days or so I think we texted 20 times, them, over a 1,000. She said mainly about her grandma, yeah right. But this is where the posts start about when you're with someone you can't stop thinking about them. When they leave it's like a nightmare. I'll never wake up from till I see them again type stuff. One night they hooked up at a local park. While I was getting ready for work, she posts I like it. So wherever the mood strikes I'm game these plus the bonfire post. It's sad I know, but I can't help but to imagine more happening. The day she had him over the house, I can still remember the towel from my shower being in a different spot and thinking that was weird. Obviously, he was there I know now, but according to her it was just lying in the bed making out. I as a man couldn't imagine going through all that to just make out. I think I know the truth but will never get it from her. When I ask, she swears she has told me absolutely everything. She has definitely fabricated up some good lies. The post on Facebook about liking it and doing it wherever the mood strikes is about a pocketbook, she says. Like I said, this is hours before they rode around and ended up at a local park for hours while I was working this night. Her family doesn't care. Her mom and dad are split. Her mom runs through men like I drink water, and her brother, who is only 30, has been divorced twice. They all knew, hell, her mom would come over and watch out son and let her use her car to go meet up. The night they met at the park her mom and I actually talked for a long time before I left for work. This probably made the wife upset because she had plans. But I was telling the mom how I'd been in a bad mood lately because our plant was closing and I was the only income. I knew it was going to be tough for us. She says y'all will be okay, now get to work. For F's sake, 10 minutes later she's pushing her daughter out the door to do his knows what with him. We were thinking of doing something alone next weekend. I may try to get something out of her then. Thinking about just straight up saying I don't care about other details except for the truth about what I think, the bonfire, the night at the park, and our house while I was working. What exactly will knowing this do? I'm not sure. Will it leave me wanting more if she confirms she was lying this whole time? Maybe I do get something more. I will find out, I guess. I was actually the best man at his wedding. This was right after a back surgery that went wrong and I wasn't even supposed to stand up for a few more weeks. I actually checked out of the hospital just to make it to the wedding. I did a lot for this dude, not as much as she did, I guess. He was new at the plant, had no friends, no money. I took him into our home. I hung out with him as tight as brothers. I helped him get ahead at the plant. All of my friends came to his housewarming, his wedding, etc. I even helped him get on a team in an effort to save the plant. I remember the day I suggested it. He was at her work with his tongue down her throat that morning. We had just talked 20 minutes prior. He worked with me and the wife worked about 5 minutes from the plant, so he would go see her in the mornings when he got off. No one else will ever come into my home again. I made the same mistake back when I was 18. High school girlfriend did the same exact thing. I was always working night and she was screwing around with my buddy. That's something else that kills me. When I met my wife, I told her what my high school girlfriend had done. She said she was a B and would never do something like that, only to do it 9 years later. My wife is a nice-looking woman. I'm average, maybe. The friend was not a good-looking guy. It was a reason she was his third woman at his age. I don't understand this part. Most of what I've read is they go for something better. I was a manager, he was an operator, I was established. He was literally paycheck to paycheck and depending on his wife where I was the breadwinner. I'm the country boy that she likes. He was the mix between thing wannabe and hillbilly. He was the drunk alcoholic that was like her ex-husband. I'm the guy everyone looks up to, not trying to be conceited, just a fact. One of our last arguments about this was a ride through the country. I was hunting one night and my ex-best friend's wife had texted me. It was late and she was telling me how she wished her husband was more like me. She texts me often. I always blew it off and said he was a good guy and it was all okay. The reality was I probably could have been hooking up with his wife all along, but I'm not that guy. When we discovered what happened, this was on the table in full effect. Have I turned it down? Sometimes I think would it have made all this easier if I'd just went on and done it. I'm glad I didn't. It wasn't the right thing to do. We had a good conversation last night. She still says that's all that happened and she would tell me if there was more. She was dining last night, which is rarity. She says she cheated because he said all the right stuff. Of course he did. I was unknowingly coaching him. He was literally asking me what kind of stuff I'd tell my wife. He said he needed advice because his marriage wasn't going the best, even with a kid on the way. I even told him things to try physically. Obviously I didn't know he was using this on the wife. She literally told me it was like US in the beginning. Almost 2 years later, my wife was sleeping with my best friend, or so I thought he was. She's always been a hugger and I never suspected them of messing around. We worked together and one day he was at the house when she came home from work. She went to the gym and he couldn't get out of the house fast enough to go home. The hug that night and him acting like a little kid told me instantly something was up. He followed her to the gym to fool around. They messed around for about 2 months. The Facebook post can confirm, as she started talking about missing someone time they leave when we were both off. So he was over our house, and post saying how she wasn't picky and liked it wherever she could get it. I was on nights and they hung out later that night, etc. About 3 days prior to me catching them, we went to a bonfire and she was gone off with him on a golf cart ride for about an hour and posted how a bonfire never felt so good. Well, I was clueless, but when I see the phone records, I lost it. Couldn't wait to confront her that night when she got home from the gym. Over course the remorse was played out, but everyone shows that, obviously because they got caught. She claims she was looking for a way out, but that was clearly BS. Now that it all played out, I wish I could have held back and watched just to see how long she would have actually messed around. I don't know how some of you do that. You are a lot better than I am. Comment: it's been 9 years. You are not over this, and honestly most people wouldn't be. This is not a failing, but it actually means you have a healthy amount of self-worth. It's time for you to stop blaming yourself for your wife's poor character. If you don't do that, this is going to be the remainder of your life. When you look at people trying to reconcile and live with someone who treated them with such disrespect, it is very common years, even decades later, to still be suffering. That is because your logical mind knows that you shouldn't. It knows that the deal you accepted was a bad one. I am sure at the time, like most people who try to argue, were hoping that you could get to a point where this would all be forgotten and you could have an even better marriage. This being the mantra you always hear about and is sold by some very misguided people on boards like this. But the truth is, in most cases, something so monstrous is never going to be forgotten. I personally believe the folks that tell you otherwise are in denial or are just lying. You are trying to live with someone who abused you terribly, and even if you can, should you? It's demeaning to spend every day trying to love your abuser. Of course, that is going to take its toll on you. If you truly want to get better, maybe it's time to reassess your situation and your marriage, what you have accepted and how your life will be moving forward. Maybe the answer is to move on without her. How about just separating for a while and see if that helps you? You are never going to be able to rationally get over this. The 9 years kind of shows you this. It's just not going to happen. I will tell you a very real truth, much more realistic than you can have a better marriage. If you ever do love someone else, that is your path to getting over this. Because what makes this so painful is that love you have for your wife. If you give that love to someone else, your then ex-wife just becomes someone in your past who did a monstrous thing to you. Maybe it's time for you to at least be open to the possibility